Ashley Browne, welcome to the latest BackPageLead Vidcast, and we've got plenty on this week. We've got the Ashes, of course, and we've got anti-siphoning legislation about to be presented to Parliament. In fact, the AFL's up in Canberra today. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about the Ashes series. I can't remember hype like it. It's an extraordinary build-up to an Ashes series because I think there's going to be competition at last.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought the hype was greater 4 years ago. You had primetime specials the night before. Tonight we're getting Warnie's TV show. 4 years ago we had like a footy show version of cricket or whatever it was. But I think there's a lot of hype. I think it's anxiety and nervousness amongst Australians that we might well lose an Ashes series on home soil, which hasn't happened since 1986. So I think that's where the hype comes from.
Fat Gat was captain.
Yeah, Fat Gat was captain. Border was just putting a team together.
I can't imagine there'll be any sort of Steve Harmison type opening to the test. I think they look pretty settled, the English, and they look in good form, and they'll give us a really good run for their money.
They look as settled as Australia's often looked before Test series in the past. You know, they know their team's been picked, I think, for the first Test before they even touched down in Perth to start the tour. Brimming with confidence, being able to send their 4 best bowlers to Brisbane a week ahead to acclimatise for the conditions while the others played down in Hobart. It was probably a cheeky move by the Cricket Australia to have down in chilly Hobart a week before the Test, but they really are looking very good. They've got the best bowler in the series in Graham Swan.
Would appear to be, yeah.
So they've got a lot going for them, but the first Test...
We do well at the Gabba.
We do well. I think we said this last time, the conditions in Brisbane are more different for England than any others they'll encounter. A bit more humidity, a bit more moisture the first couple of days. The ball won't do much. The spinners don't get a heap of result out of a test in Brisbane. So there's a huge chance. If England wins his first test, I'd find it really hard to imagine Australia being able to get its way back into the series.
Already lots of speculation about who will be picked and who won't be picked and the fitness of various players, including Michael Clarke. But it was interesting to pick up the papers today, Ash, and see the Australian having the scoop or the latest news with Doug Bollinger being overlooked for the test and Peter Siddle taking his place. And the other two papers, the Herald Sun and the Age, seem to be very slow off the mark in that particular score. Yeah, the Australian got the scoop. I think a Perth-based news website might have had the tip even on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening that it was going to happen. Name we won't mention.
No, not at this stage. But anyway, so they've done pretty well. And I think, yeah, Bollinger, he's been a bit... His fitness hasn't been great anyway. Siddle hasn't played Test cricket for a long time, so again, it's another unknown, another big question mark for Australia to take into the Test match.
I must say, since Australia its form has dropped away in the last year or two, its chickens are coming home to roost a bit, I reckon, in that it's Australians, a lot of Australians, sort of fair-minded sporting fans, seem to be, I won't say queuing up to get the boots into them, but there is sort of an element of schadenfreude about their fall from grace, if you like, because they have, when they're at the top of the pile, they behaved so badly for such a long time that I think people are actually taking a certain amount of satisfaction out of the fact now they're struggling a little. Do you get that?
I certainly picked that up. I mean, I'll use myself. I'm not the greatest fan of the Australian cricket team. The fact they're playing England in an Ashes series means I'll obviously want them to win. But if they're playing just about anybody else, I just don't think I'd be that interested, to be honest. They're not, haven't been for a long time a likeable group. And yeah, the chickens are coming home to roost a bit, but we do want them to win. I think nothing could be worse than losing an Ashes series on home soil. So we want them to pull a finger out and have some wins. But yeah, I think there is an element out there that is just waiting for them to fall.
I should refer.
Which then I think just sort of go on, which then brings the whole issue of the state of the game into question as well, because I think if the Australian cricket team can't afford a sustained losing period for the health of the sport in the country.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's probably a topic for another time, but the sport is really struggling, I would say, at the moment, and Cricket Australia sort of really got its hands full and trying to work out what it is they can do to revive this really a staple of the summer, but not really so much anymore, I would have thought.
No, I think the Soccers must have done it, and just as the world gets smaller, you can indulge yourself in global sports overseas, view them comfortably in real time, and you don't have to sort of wander out to watch cricket. The issue that cricket's going to face is in this era of short attention spans, in a 5-day test match, but we grew up on that we love, but you're not going to build your brand through 5-day test matches, and even 50 over 1-day matches. Going to the MCG for 8 hours to sit through a cricket match in this day and age is increasingly a thing of the past. So that's the issue cricket faces, but it is a discussion for another time.
Yeah, we could fill up the full 9 minutes. Just before we leave the cricket, one of our columnists, James Dunn, appears to have been deeply scarred by the events.
He's always deeply scarred by the Ashes.
18 months ago when we lost the Ashes in England.
How's he coping? Jimmy Essendon's on the bottom and the Australian cricket team's on the bottom.
He's doing it very tough. I think he's taking a poultice of sleeping tablets to help him get to bed at night. But Jimmy came up with a novel suggestion this week that the baggy green cap be shelved until the Australians start playing like the Aussies of old. It was like a privilege they no longer had earned, and that like the Cornhuskers, you'd better tell me about the Cornhuskers.
Nebraska's University of Nebraska college football team with the black training tops. It was all even. It was news to me even when I read it. But good piece by Jim. Not quite sure I would go that far, although I'm also mightily disappointed with a lot of the efforts we've seen by the baggy green. But to go back to the canary yellow of World Series cricket, I'm not quite sure that's the way to go either.
No, can't have that. Look, on to topic number 2, which is almost as important, anti-siphoning legislation. I must say you're full bottle on it, more so than I am. Why, and I know the AFL is up in Canberra today making a representation to Stephen Conroy, the Communications Minister, about this terribly important issue. Explain to me why it is so important.
It's important because you've got the interest of the sporting leagues like the AFL, cricket, NRL. The fewer sports that are protected on the anti-siphoning list means more competition for the broadcasters for the rights. If it's completely open slather, then you've got an auction for 8 matches on AFL a week, 8 TV matches a week, drives your price up in the negotiations. Then the government looks at the national interest and says, well, these certain number of sports here are sacrosanct and they must be available to all Australians. You shouldn't have to pay to be able to watch these particular events on TV. So that's what the discussion now about how many AFL matches, how many NRL matches, cricket, tennis, golf, the whole lot are going to be on free-to-air versus pay. I've had a bit of a look at it with my proposed list on BackPageLead. The other thing to bear in mind is that Senator Conroy's recommendations will have some sporting events go straight to the A list, in which case they have to be shown on the main Channel 9 or Channel 7 or Channel 10. There'll be other events that can go to a B list, which means they can be shown in the digital channels. Where this works is, for example, with the AFL Friday Night Football, which at the moment on Channel 7 in Sydney and Brisbane is shown after midnight. But by freeing this up and putting them on the digital channels, they'll be live on 7 Mate or 7-2, whatever the Channel 7.
1HD
or not 1HD, or for Channel 9, there might be NRL in Southern Australia, might be available on Friday night, not on Channel 9, but on Go, or again, whatever their third gem or whatever their third channel's called. So it's quite, it works that way. The big sport that will bear the most, which I think they won't be anything too drastic with they'll allow 4 matches on AFL to go straight to Foxtel or another pay TV bidder, and they'll the same for NRL. The soccer is an interesting one. That's the one that I'm most interested in, because on the one hand you've got the Fox Sports has the complete monopoly for all games other than World Cup finals, pretty much. But there's an argument that I'm putting forward that the Socceroos are now a very popular Australian sporting team, in much the same way as the Wallabies and the Australian Test cricket team, and that more of their matches should now be made on free-to-air TV, which FFA would hate, because its TV rights would be driven right down. If Fox Sports couldn't pay for Socceroo qualifiers and the A-League, they paid good money for that, but they couldn't pay for Socceroos anymore. That would drive the value right down, because the A-League isn't quite there as a TV product yet.
Okay, well, we'll watch those developments with interest, and we'll be hoping that Ricky Ponting calls tails, bats, and there'll be 2 for 300 at stumps tomorrow. Any chance of that?
Who, the Australians?
The baggy yellows, yeah.
The baggy yellows? No, I don't think so. Look, my prediction for the Test series is a 2-all draw. England retains it. Hate to say it, but I think that's the way it's going.
No, I'm very confident about the local lads. 2-1 Australia.